Harley Davidson has to be outside of their minds to charge what they charge for motorcycles. Just gotta be, right? I don't know that that's entirely true. And if you stick around, I'm going to go through several models and go through comparable models on the overall motorcycle market to see where Harley stacks up. I'm just going to give the numbers. They're all going to come direct from the factory or manufacturer when I can get the numbers, but I want to look at MSRP, horsepower, torque, and weight. Those four things are pretty much the big four when you're talking about the price and comparability, right? I'm also going to try to find models that have the same kind of aesthetic because we want to stay in the same category. So like mid-cruiser, entry mid-cruiser to entry mid-cruiser, you know, performance like mid-cruiser to performance mid-cruiser, heavy cruisers, everything's going to be kind of matched so that we see what Harley gives you versus what 3 or 4 other competitors give you in that same area. I feel like it's a fair way to do it. All my numbers can be found right off the manufacturer website unless they don't provide it. And then I will tell you, I got these from Google and I'm going to benefit the higher numbers if they give a range. So let's get into it. To start this off, let's go little guy to big guy, right? So we're going to start with the entry level mid-size cruiser from Harley Davidson, the Nightster. The Nightster MSRPs at $9,999, $10K, right? Horsepower is 91, torque is 72, weight is 481. Pretty solid bike. A little big to be a true entry, but on cruisers, you're more laid back, you're more relaxed. It does have rain mode, sport mode, all that. So like you can tame it a little bit. I think you could start on a 900 to 1100 cc mid cruiser if you wanted. They aren't terribly heavy. They aren't insanely powerful, and it's a laid back riding position, which is more manageable. The next one down would obviously be, we're going to get all of the Indian comparables. The Scout 60. The MSRP is $9,999, $10K. The horsepower, 85. Torque, 65. Weight, 536. The next one, Honda. Honda Rebel 1100. I really like this one. I think it's probably the best deal out of the group. But its MSRP is $9,699, so you're saving $400. I had to get horsepower and torque from Google, so the high-end numbers they gave for horse and torque on that were 87 horsepower, 72 torque, and a weight of 497. And the last one, I kind of wasn't sure if I should include this. It's the Bonneville T100. It is that classic look. It's a mid-size cruiser, 900cc, which is a little bit smaller than the rest of these engines, but it is the closest thing to this price and kind of category that Triumph gives you. And Triumph is something that people talk a lot about when they talk about how Triumph and Royal Enfield are offering much better prices than people like Harley and Indian. So I wanted to include this. The Triumph T100 MSRP is at $11,495, so the most expensive of the group. Horsepower is 64, torque is 80, and the weight is 502. So looking at the overall numbers, Harley has the most horsepower. It has the second most torque, tied with the Rebel 1100, and it's the lightest of the bunch with an MSRP that matches the Indian. It's a $400 more expensive than the Rebel, and it's cheaper than the Bonneville. So I don't know. I think that the Nightster is appropriately priced in its market competition for what it is offering you. based on those 3 other motorcycles. Let me know if I'm wrong on that one. All right, next one up is the Sportster S. Love this category. Extremely small category, though. It is hard to find comparables to the Sportster S. I would call it a mid-size muscle cruiser. It's kind of where it fits, right? It's not a full-size muscle cruiser. It's the smaller engines, smaller frame. Obviously, the Indian 101 is going to come up against it. The closest Triumph I found was the Bonneville Speedmaster, which I'll throw that out there. Thought about the Speed Cafe 1200, but that is a rear control. Same with the like Ducati Monster or Ducati Scrambler. So those really aren't comparable. And I'm going to throw in the Kawasaki Vulcan S, even though it's 700cc. And I don't think that comparison is fair. I just really don't think the Vulcan S is truly in this category. It's almost a light sport cruiser instead of a mid-weight speed cruiser. But I'm going to throw it in there because that's the type of comparison that I see a lot of times, where you take something that's arguably not in the same category and pull it up into the Harley category. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on paper when you start talking about numbers. So the Sportster S MSRP is at $15,999. It has 121 horsepower, 93 foot-pounds of torque, and it weighs 502 pounds. Thing rips. The Indian 101, which I actually like, I really enjoyed riding on this motorcycle. MSRP is at $16,999, 111 horsepower, 82 foot-pounds of torque with an overall weight of 549 pounds. You can make the argument that the Indian 101 does come with Öhlins shocks. So, you know, you're getting a little bit for that extra 1,000 despite the gap in horsepower, weight, and torque. I think they're pretty comparable, honestly, overall. The Bonneville Speedmaster, gonna be cheaper. It MSRP's at $14,795. But you're getting 77 horsepower, 78 foot-pounds of torque, 584 pounds. So it's heavier than the other two with a good chunk less horsepower and torque. And then, like I said, I don't like this last comparison, the Vulcan S. The ABS version, which we're going to use because all 3 of those other bikes have ABS, comes in at $8,149. Great price. If you're just getting into motorcycles, that is a decent starting point. You're getting 60 horsepower, 46 foot-pounds of torque, and 498 pounds overall. So it's just a shade under the weight of the Sportster S, but like there is a chasm of power difference. And that's because that that Vulcan, it's only a 700cc engine. But people make these comparisons and they pull things up in categories to compare to Harley prices because Harley doesn't offer anything in the 700cc. So like it's easy to say like Harley has these insane prices, but they don't offer or cater that segment of the market, which I think is a big mistake. I'm going to continue to say it's a big mistake. Harley doesn't have anything in the under 10K, under 900cc market. They need to get down there. They need to expand. They need to branch out. I'll agree with that. But if you look at these comparables, realistically, Harley's kind of right where the market is. They're a little bit cheaper than the Indian 101 when arguably you're getting more bike. Arguably, right? There's feature differences, but they're just barely more expensive than that Speedmaster and getting more. I don't know. I think they're dead center of the market on the Sportster S pricing too. And it's hard to argue when the overall market says this is what we're selling bikes for. Next model, the entry-level heavy cruisers. Heavy cruisers, Harley Davidson's bread and butter. But at the entry level, we're dealing with the Street Bob. There's a couple like it. But again, we'll look at prices, see where everything falls. Harley Davidson Street Bob, $14,999 with horsepower at 98 and 120 foot-pounds of torque, weighing in at 646 pounds. Pretty reasonable. Honestly, you can get a Street Bob for Sportster S price. Less than a Sportster S, right? So, like, these are fairly easy to get into considering the size and what type of bike it is. The Indian Chief is $14,999 with a 74 horsepower. It's off of Google. Can't confirm it. Not really solid on that, but 74 is kind of the range they give for that model. 108 torque is right off their website, and 670 pounds. So, pretty comparable. You know, we're close. We're really close. The R18 BMW, the base model, nothing special, just an R18. $15,395, a little bit more expensive. It's BMW, right? Oh, what do we expect? BMW. 91 horsepower, 120 foot-pounds of torque, 760 pounds. So it is right there, right on top of these other guys. A little bit more expensive, though. It is what it is, BMW. And I'm going to throw in this Honda because I feel like if you look at it, you're going to say it belongs in this category, but it does not. I feel like this with the same as the Kawasaki Vulcan. Honda Shadow. It has the look. It really has the look. It looks like the thing, right? But the MSRP is $8,699. For that price, you're getting 46 horsepower, 50 foot-pounds of torque, and 553 pounds. So it's lighter. It is a lot smaller CC, and it's a lot smaller horsepower and torque. And that's just another example of those comparisons that I've seen in these types of categories where you're like, does that really belong there? I'm not sure that it does. I don't like throwing it in necessarily because I don't think it's a comparable model. But those are the prices. Let's keep marching forward. The next one up, Heritage Classic. This is some people's ride or die. This is quintessential Harley Davidson, classic look, stunning appeal. It is the old school Harley that everyone thinks about. The Heritage Classic. It's got the windscreen. It's got the bags. It's got everything you need, nothing you don't want, right? It's about as authentic classic as these big cruisers get. And there are some comparisons to be made. So the Heritage Classic itself comes at $19,999 with 98 horsepower, 120 foot-pounds of torque, and a weight of 719 pounds. Pretty solid bike, honestly. The Indian Super Chief is kind of the same classic appeal. Windscreen, leather bags. The Indian leather bags are not hard locking like the new Heritages are. But its MSRP is $21,999. The horsepower is a big question mark. I put 84 because it says on Google the Chief can go from 74 to 84 horsepower depending on model. Will not give me a specific HP for this model, so I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt at the 84 horsepower top end, assuming it has the same performance as the Sport Chief RT. Maybe that's a bold assumption, but I'll give it to him. Torque 120 and weight 739 pounds. Now, BMW also makes a classic style bike, the R18 Classic. Same thing, windscreen, leather bags. It's got the look. MSRP is $18,395. Good job, BMW. You are probably the deal of a steal in this category. Horsepower is 91. Torque is 120 foot-pounds, and it weighs 114 pounds. So it's a little bit heavier and a little bit less horsepower, but realistically, you are saving some money there. And it's hard to fault BMW for that. Look, they have the cheaper option in this specific category. They do. And like, it's up to the rider to decide, and it's up to the rider to decide on all of these. What makes you happy? What are you drawn to? But again, I can't say Harley Davidson is out of pocket on these numbers, because the models that they closely compare to are in that same price range. This price range is essentially 18.5 to 22. Indian being the high watermark, BMW being the low watermark, Harley right in the middle. Next model. All right, it's time for the big boys. Let's do some baggers. Start with the base model Road Glide. Everyone knows it. But the MSRP, they have a solo billiard gray chrome option for $25,999. Not going to use that one, because realistically all the other ones are 2-up. So why am I going to hold the 1-up standard to the 2-up standard? So the 2-up billiard gray chrome is $27,999. Horsepower is 105. The torque is 130, and it weighs 838 pounds. They're hefty boys, right? We all know it's true. But we get into the Indian Challenger. The MSRP is at $27,999. It has 122 horsepower, 128 torque, and weighs 855. Now with these two specifically, I can kind of get a little bit more detailed in this, because I own one and I've rid one. I've been on all of Indian's models, right? And they ride differently. They really do. The Indian's smoother, more consistent power. The Harley is really low end, torquey, snappy. They feel different. But at the end of the day, this is not a Grand Canyon between them. They work kind of the same. And like, ultimately it depends on rider feel and what you're after. But like, I really like these comparatively, because they give you a different option at the same price for about the same performance. It's just how it gets you there is a little bit different, and you can feel that when you're riding it. You really can. And that Indian weighing 855, it feels like a lighter bike than it actually is. I don't know how or why, but it does. It just does feel like a lighter bike than it actually is. So, you know, really good bikes from both of them. I like them both, and they're the same price. Even though people insist they aren't, they are. Now, the BMW K16B, with its MSRP, it starts at $24,975. But like the solo option of the Road Glide, I'm going to have to say I can't go with that base, because that's with foot pegs. And in order to get foot boards, like you would find on a Indian or Harley cruiser bagger, you have to add the bagger package, which puts you at an MSRP of $28,225. I feel like that's fair. I'm sure someone's going to tell me why it isn't, but that's what it is. This thing is a monster though. 160 horsepower and 132 pounds of torque with a weight of 758. Like, with this one and the next one, the Honda, there's something that's very obvious here. Those are straight 6-cylinder engines versus V-twins. We are talking a vastly different game at this point, but they are comparable at the end of the day. What the rider is looking for when they buy these things. So I'm going to say it's a screaming deal. That thing is going to move. I don't know. They're a hodgepodge between sport bikes and traditional baggers. And I don't hate them. I really like them. But pricing wise, we are still in the same ballpark. And then when we move on to the Goldwing, the MSRP starts base at that for $25,500. The caveat there is, again, you can't even get floorboards for those. You just get foot pegs. And both the BMW Goldwing are more of a mid-position control instead of forward position, no floorboards. So they're different. As much as they are same, they're different. But $25,500, I see why people like to go there. It's 125 horsepower over 125 torque at 806 pounds. Those two are lighter with a little more horsepower. And I think Harley's the only one that beats the Goldwing on torque. Now, Harley and Indian beat the Goldwing on torque. So, like, these are options, right? I think that BMW is just, I have to believe it would smoke any of the other ones on the road. Not even close, right? But, we're still in the same ballpark here. And the one that I like to bring up, or people like to bring up, is the Valquero. I love the Valquero. I think the Valquero is such a good entry-level bagger. It gets you into the bagger dirt cheap. It MSRPs at $19,999. It is a cheap bagger, and you cannot argue with that. However, it's 82 horsepower and 107 torque and 844 pounds. So I look at the Valquero and I say it's not really in that same category, because this is a V-twin also. So it's not really in the same category. It's not getting you the power performance you're getting out of the Harley or Indian. And you can make the same argument that Harley and Indian aren't giving you the same performance as the BMW. But the BMW Goldwing are a little bit different. Just design, operation, what they deliver. So I don't know. I like them, and again, I think Harley's in the ballpark. Maybe Harley and Indian can work on their price a little bit. Harley is addressing it though, because like I said, you can get the Solo Billiard Gray for $25,999. For the Road Glide, the Street Glide one is $24,999. So they are trying to give price saving options, even though it might not be exactly what you're looking for. I think Harley's kind of in the same spot there, right? They're middle of the pack. They're fairly comparable. They're right there with Indian and the floorboard version of the BMW. And the Valquero is one of those ones where I don't think it really belongs in this category, but people insist on putting it in this category. Those are just my thoughts on that one. Let's wrap this up. So, at the end of the day, we can talk about pricing, and these things don't exist in a vacuum, right? Harley Davidson is really the only one that gets flack for being overpriced, doesn't make power motorcycles, but I just showed you across their entire spectrum that that's not really the case. They are priced with their competition, and they make power comparable to their competition. And a lot of those, they're making better power at the same price. So I don't know where it comes from. And arguments can be made. Don't get me wrong. I am not a Harley is perfect guy. Their CVO line, and I will continue to say this, CVO line is overpriced. Because if you look at the Elite versus a CVO, Indian Elite versus the CVO, that Elite starts, well, it's $6,000 less than the cheapest CVO. I don't necessarily like that. I think Harley can do better on CVO pricing. I also like that Indian allows me to buy a base model and swap out the 112 with the 108. To get a 122 or 121, I have to buy the CVO. And I don't think that's the right move either. Give me an option for a base model 121. Don't make it the VVT CVO engine, just a base model 121. The CVO can still make more power and you can still have that separate, but give me an option to go from 117 to 121 on the base model like Indian does. I like that. There are things that Harley also does like their paint. They're really proud of their paint. Somewhat comparable, but like, I'm sorry, Billiard Gray isn't the best base model color. I don't think it does very well on the market, but $500 for black? That's not even a special color. I can understand your two tones and the one I got, the Midnight Fire, and things that take a little extra effort. I get it all day, twice on Sunday, but like your base colors, basic red, basic blue, basic gray, basic white, like some of those don't need to be priced the way they are. And that's just realistic. And as far as parts and maintenance, look, it's run by dealerships. Independent dealerships across the country have a lot of finite control over maintenance. Parts are what they are. You know, Harley Davidson costs you $100. But like, parts are expensive, and it's kind of that way with most brands, but most brands are a little bit better on pricing on parts. And maintenance, I'm sorry, that's independent dealerships. I can't fault Harley Davidson themselves for that, but I definitely see where that side is coming from. That isn't what this video is. This video is Harley Davidson is overpriced out of the box, and I gotta call it a lie. I gotta say it's not true. You can argue some of those other details, and I probably agree with you to a certain degree. But when you're talking about MSRP to MSRP, base model to base model, performance, base, nothing changes. These things don't exist in a vacuum. One that wasn't listed on here was the Lowrider S, which is $1,000 cheaper than the Sport Chief now, because they dropped the price on it, because they want to meet the customer and demand in the middle. They have lowered some prices on models, and they are trying to find consumer-friendly options to get people in. Harley is working on that, and the mentality of Harley is shifting. If you haven't seen it or heard about it, put your ear to the ground for a second, and you'll begin to pick it up. I think Harley Davidson is seriously shifting their mentality when it comes to these things. And as it sits right now, despite the overwhelming call that they are getting out of control, they're really not. And I just showed you. But every single number I gave was straight from websites whenever I could get it. Otherwise, it was from Google, and I pointed out when it was from Google. You can go and verify all those MSRPs, all those options, all the numbers that I gave. Harley is within the markets that they are in and priced within those markets accordingly. If you're arguing against that by saying they're overpriced, you're wrong. If you're just saying they're overpriced because the economy is hard and you can't see or justify that price, I can sympathize with you, but the entire motorcycle market has said this is where we're at now. And it sucks. It's not great, right? But like I've told a lot of my friends and people around me, is you don't want these to be cheaper. You want them to feel cheaper. You want the economy to heal to such a way that wages increase at a better rate than inflation, so that it feels like you have more money without things physically getting cheaper. Because things physically getting cheaper is a bad economy too. And with everyone competing, I would really tend to believe that if one of these guys could do the exact comparison cheaper, they would. You would not see these clustered pricings if these brands could make them at a significant savings, because they could try to undercut and kill off competition that way. But that's not what you're seeing. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but at the end of the day, I was fair, right? I didn't give you anything that can't be found or verified. I only gave numbers. So it's not like I was saying this company's doing amazing and this company's doing bad. I just said these are the numbers. And in my opinion, they're all kind of right on top of each other. And it's hard to disagree with that because they're factually kind of right on top of each other, right? I don't know. Thanks for hanging out. If you made it this far, make sure to like and subscribe. I appreciate the hell out of you all just hanging out and having conversations. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.